Persons listening to this show should experience varying degrees of euphoria and might radiate a warm glow of truth from their entire being. This phenomenon sometimes lasts hours after a typical brain massage. If you are listening with another lights-on listener and they begin to glow, don't be concerned. This is a phenomenon normally associated with Pastor Scheidbach's patented brain massage technique and merely means the truth has set them free. The devil beware. Pastor Scheidbach is on the air.
Hello, I'm Dr. Scheidbach, pastor at the Lighthouse Baptist Church in Santa Maria, California, and your brain masseur. Get ready for your brain massage. COVID ID. A liberal who thinks it would be a good idea if she gets the virus to attend a Trump rally and spread it around. And then I've got Reggie's blog here, an inside look at Bernie's world. Schumer threatens Gorsuch and Kavanaugh by name at a pro-abortion rally where Democrat insanity was put on full display. Romney threatens to block investigation into Bidengate. I guess someone had to do it. Might as well be the brain masseur. Bidengate. Arizona broke with the pack years ago and refused to do the time change dance. And now, more recently, Arizona said no to LGBTQ insanity of allowing men to claim they're women so they can compete in a male body against women. Yeah. Passed a bill to prevent males from competing in female sports. Good for them. One responder tweeted, well, they'd better be more specific. This male-female thing isn't enough. You've got to say XY chromosome types cannot compete with XX chromosome types. She has a point. Oh, here you go. Talk about making progress toward restoring sanity in America. The Supreme Court ruled 5-4 that, quote, states can prosecute illegals for stealing American IDs, end quote. Excuse me, 5-4? Why wouldn't that be 9-0? Conservatives held together on this one, but every liberal whack job jurist voted against it. Thank God for Trump's court picks, making our courts sane again. And as for a stellar example of how ignorant liberal media types really are, here's MSNBC Brian Williams agreeing with New York Times Mara Gay that Bloomberg's $500 million spent on his campaign would have been better spent if he gave everyone in America $1 million. If he had distributed his $500 million to the 327 million Americans, every American gets $1 million. That's enough to make your brain hurt. Okay, I'll help you. Divide 500 million by 327 million, and every American might get $1.50. These people are morons. And 6 million viewed that post. Yikes. And then there's Biden, as usual, so reassuring. He wants to give us quality health care, right? And he follows that with a kind of unconscious moment of truthfulness when he says, we won't give you quality health care, not quality, but we'll make sure it's only affordable. I know. Yeah, one guy said Biden is gaff-tastic. Biden is the front runner for the Democratic nomination. Folks, this is scary. And you know that Trump is just shaking in his boots, right? Anyway, as my friend in LA would say, never let up. And don't relax. We need to stay engaged fully. We need to press hard all the way through November, my friends. It is time for your brain massage.
Truth served here, flavored with delectable wit, succulent sagacity, luscious logic. A gourmet meal for the mind.
COVID ID. They finally settled on a name for the newest coronavirus to escape Wuhan virology lab. Or, as some think, to jump from bat flesh to bat-eating Chinese. And then from them to so many others. Or, as some are saying now, to have evolved spontaneously in nature and magically appear in humans. And so they've named it COVID-19. And that's CO for corona, VID, I assume, for virus disease, or perhaps it's V for virus and ID for identification, and then they gave it the number, identification 19, because it appeared in 2019. People keep calling it the coronavirus. Well, the fact is the coronavirus identifies a type of virus, specifically that migrates from animals. You remember the bird flu, you remember the swine flu, to humans. And COVID-19 identifies one of these coronaviruses, that is the latest. The symptoms line up with your typical flu, which, incidentally, your average flu kills thousands. Every year, the CDC estimates 12,000 die every year from the seasonal flu, and I think that's a worldwide number. I understand that's 0.1% of the total number of cases. The difference, of course, is that we have a vaccine for the seasonal flu, although it does seem to mutate, doesn't it? And they have to come up with a little variation every time. And however, there is no vaccine for COVID-19. I do understand Israel has come up with something that they are testing, and of course we're on it too here in good old America. Trump donated his last quarter's salary to help find a cure. And while we're on that point, did you know that Trump put together a task force to deal with this back in January when it first surfaced? Yeah, before you even heard about it, Trump was on it. But CNN did not like the color of the task force. The only notice they gave to Trump's effort to collect the best and brightest to address this concern was the color makeup of the task force. How sad. That's liberalism for you. Totally color focused. Conservatives, basically color blind. Just get the best people immediately available to get the job done. I don't care what color you are. Liberals, let's put together a group that has a certain number of persons of color, and let's avoid getting any old white guys because, that makes it look bad, and they get all tied up in political correctness. It's sad. And folks, I don't know about you, but I'm sick of that nonsense. I could care less what color somebody is. Just get the job done, for everybody. But that's CNN and all the rest of the liberals out there. The only thing they had to say about Trump taking action to get ahead of this virus outbreak in dirty China was to criticize his lack of political correctness sensitivity. Meanwhile, CNN, MSNBC, CBS, ABC, and all the rest, during that time, were spending 24/7 talking about impeaching the most effective president in America's history. The period, most period, effective period, president period, end period, American period, history period. In my rummaging through the news for this week, I came across a blog I found very interesting. It's called Reggie's Blog, and that's so you can find it, but I must say I know nothing else about Reggie. I cannot vouch for his blog beyond the fact that I found this interesting article. I did the best I could to verify his information. It describes an experience he and his wife had in China 18 years ago, so it was necessary to make sure his descriptions at least remotely approximated current life in China. And I found that if you get off the government-controlled grid, as he and his wife did a few times during their 3 weeks visit, his descriptions are right on. So I decided to roll with it. He described stepping in urine mixed with feces in the streets and public walkways in China, and noticing the toddlers squatting to dump their load through their split pants. Willy-nilly here and there out in public. Yeah, the toddlers wear split pants so they can squat wherever they feel the need and drop their feces or spill their urine in the streets. He described visiting some public restaurants where he witnessed a Chinese man hawk up something ugly and very unappetizing and expectorating it onto the floor in the public restaurant, indoors, and no one taking any notice or expressing any concern. He described getting sick while there, and I mean flu symptoms, more severe than anything he had experienced before. He didn't tell us what it was. So on top of all the unsanitary things he experienced and saw going on there, he had to rush his 8-month-old baby, for whom he and his wife had gone to China to complete their adoption and then bring back to America. And the conditions in the hospital were abysmal. One doctor serving, he guesstimated 300 patients, so they waited and waited and waited, disturbed by the spectacle of children whining and crying all about here and there with scalp IVs in their heads. When a plastic table was finally available for their baby to be examined, they noticed it was splattered with mucus and blood, and anyway, they took the initiative to clean off the table before the doctor arrived, who quickly examined the baby and left, hoping, he told them, that he could find a basic antibiotic for the baby. Reggie and his wife and their newly adopted baby waited. Reggie tells us that it was at this time that he began to realize that what he was experiencing wasn't some, as he put it, backward culture or a third world society. No, he said, these people were not genetically inferior to first worlders. They weren't less evolved than I was, he said. Reggie realized he was witnessing, quote, the kind of maximum efficiency a society must develop when the state is the master and the individual is merely a subject, end quote. He explained that in such a society, who are you going to complain to, right? Your complaints could only go to the government about the government. So since you are a subject of the government isn't subject to you. In a communist society, the government does not answer to you. You answer to those in power. And you better watch what you say, because they've got the power to make you pay. Now, folks, I remembered seeing pretty much the same thing in my early visits to Russia. Soon after communism fell, I was there in 91. I remember visiting hospitals, and I saw it firsthand walking through one of our hospitals today. Good night, it's like you're in a high-end hotel. But in Russia, it was depressing, dirty, disheveled. All the doctors and nurses were clearly harassed and overworked. The patients neglected, and it was crowded conditions. It stank. It was nauseating. And it was very, very sad. Every single person that worked in the hospital knew that I was an American. I mean, for some reason, when you travel, if you travel, you know what I mean. They just identify you, mostly because you walk around smiling all the time. And they knew enough to be embarrassed by their circumstances, humiliated in my presence, which I felt uncomfortable about that. But in other words, these were not people with lower IQs than mine. Probably many, if not most of them there, were smarter than me. They were not of some inferior breed. They were not less than, but they lived in a different culture and under different government than I did. They had just come out of 70 years of oppression with government ownership of everything, not only the means of production, but their souls. And I read this and reflected on my own similar experiences, and I realized that this guy is describing Bernie's America. This is what all of America will look like if we don't stop the Democrats from taking over this country. We are approaching these sorts of conditions in San Francisco and Los Angeles already. And other places in America are beginning to look like and smell like China streets. San Francisco has to provide a map for its visitors to avoid human feces dumped on the sidewalks in that erstwhile beautiful city, ruined by Democrats, ruined by policies that transfer more and more power into the hands of bureaucrats and taking it from and out of the hands of we the people. We see it in our county governments too. It's a natural thing, by the way, for bureaucracies to encroach upon our autonomy increasingly over time, unless it's checked. It's just a natural progression. Now, I've read books written by bureaucrats explaining this phenomenon and trying to make provisions against it, but bureaucrats just tend to squeeze and squeeze and squeeze more and more of your autonomy out of your life and take more and more control of your life, choking freedom, killing liberty. And it's an interesting phenomenon. It's very natural in those kinds of organizations in America. Thank God. We can hold them accountable. We can check that. And we have the right to redress our grievances. And we can say to a bureaucrat that is clearly usurping more power over our lives than they legally have the right to. We can challenge their usurped authority over us. And by the way, we should. We must never forget that our government serves us. It's not the other way around. We do not live in Bernie's beloved Cuba or in his honeymoon spot, Soviet Union, or in China. We are Americans. And don't let big gulp Bloomberg or bumbling Biden fool you. Now, they might be rolling communist Bernie out of the picture here, but listen, these people aren't really any different. Look, a corrupt liberal capitalist is no less a tyrant than a committed loony communist. Biden is no better than Bernie. Both of these men will buy your soul with so-called free stuff, healthcare and so on, and then steal your liberties. Use it to steal your liberties. Biden, as usual, so reassuring. He wants to give us quality healthcare, right? He follows that with a kind of unconscious moment of truthfulness. It's almost surreal how it just sort of exudes out of his mouth there when he basically says, so we're not going to give you quality health care, but we're going to make sure it's affordable. I know. One guy said Biden is gaftastic. Yeah, listen to this.
And for folks in the working class that are below 400, they will increase their premiums. The public option will be available in my plan. We'll make sure it's not quality. We'll make sure it's only affordable.
My friends, this man is the front runner for the Democratic nomination. I know. Yeah, you just know Trump is shaking in his boots, right? Now, I need to take a short break. Did you hear Lindsey Graham summarize the whole Biden-Gate scandal? It was perfect, well done, laid out as clearly as anybody could make it. And anyone refusing now to move forward on that investigation is clearly un-American. They've got some other motive. And guess who wants to block the investigation? Yep, Romney. Ridiculous Romney. What a traitor. Why? Well, he's got kids with their hands in this mess up to their own elbows. Anyway, as my friend in L.A. would say, never let up. The enemy won't. We need to press hard all the way through November. Hold on to the break. I'll be right back. Hi, I'm Jerry. You know me as the Brain Masseur and as pastor of Lighthouse Baptist Church here in Santa Maria. We distributed several thousand copies of my books over the years, The Unabridged Gospel, The New Cart Church. Let me talk to you about my latest book, God's War, Why Christians Should Rule the World. Now, I know the title raises eyebrows, But, my friend, that's only because we have been conditioned to think Christians have no place in politics. If you heard someone say, atheists should rule the world, you wouldn't bat an eye. We hear from the world often that only non-religious people should rule. Secularists should rule the world. Humanists should rule the world. Muslims often declare that Islam should rule the world. And even though these things are said, few people take exception to it. They might not agree, but they don't particularly get all stirred up about it. It's quietly dismissed as something we understand that those people would say. So why is it surprising to anyone that a Christian would say Christians ought to rule the world? Haven't you noticed that wherever Christians or Christianity prevails in a culture and influences the politics of that nation, there is a greater degree of liberty and respect for life and property? But wherever atheists, such as communists, rule, there is oppression and tyranny? And even in socialist countries, ruled mostly by persons that would identify themselves as secularists, where these ideologies prevail, freedom is strangled, it's limited. There's no assumption of inalienable rights. Frankly, it depends on how much Christian influence remains in those cultures, how much freedom the people enjoy. Pay attention. The less Christian, the less freedom. There is a reason for all of this, and I explain it in my book, God's War, Why Christians Should Rule the World. Now, you can get it on Amazon or from our bookstore. Go to godswar2020.com. For the sake of our liberties, get the book today. Read it and heed it and understand the truth. For as Jesus promised, it is the truth that will set you free. godswar2020.com.
Stand by. The Brain Massage Show is about to blow your
Hello,
mind.
my friends. Welcome back. I'm Dr. Scheidbach, pastor at the Lighthouse, your brain masseur, and Paul Revere's lantern lighter. Lighting the lamps in the church belfry arch, signaling the enemy is on the march, an enemy that will sure enough steal from us our liberties. Schumer threatened Gorsuch and Kavanaugh by name at a pro-abortion rally gathered right in front of the Supreme Court buildings, where Democrat insanity was put on full display. Schumer has been hammered for this, and well, he should be. Can you imagine a crowd of very angry pro-abortion protesters? And I mean angry, folks. He shouts, "I want to tell you, Gorsuch, I want to tell you, Kavanaugh, you have released the whirlwind, and you will pay the price. You won't know what hit you if you go forward with these awful decisions," quote unquote. And really, it was worse than that. Did you see it? You need to see it as well as hear and read it. You need to see this man angrily, purposely shouting, pointing up at the Supreme Court building, trying to stir up the crowd, naming Gorsuch and Kavanaugh, specifically targeting them with his threats, with repercussions if they vote contrary to what he says they ought to do. Now, they are hearing arguments and deciding, that is, the court's hearing arguments and deciding on whether a Louisiana law that requires abortion providers to have admitting privileges at a hospital near the abortuary in order to ensure that doctor will be able to provide necessary care for his patient if the need arises. Now, for Democrats, this impedes a woman's right to hire a doctor to murder her baby because this medical operation involving invasion into a woman's body to dismember the body of a baby growing in her womb is typically done by low-level doctors who work cheap, and so they depend on high-volume business. Yeah, I'm not kidding you. So many of these sorts of so-called doctors cannot get admitting privileges to hospitals because, well, they're not qualified, or the hospital will not recognize them. They'll have enough room on their staff to do that. Imagine these murderers don't care about the health of the baby or the woman carrying the baby. They only care about protecting their bottom line. So what's the big deal about Schumer, the minority leader in the United States Senate, a senator, shouting threats in front of the Supreme Court building, naming, calling out specific jurists, Gorsuch and Kavanaugh, and threatening them, clearly trying to intimidate them into ruling the way he thinks they should. Man, it was bad enough when then President Obama chided the court during a State of the Union address for making a decision he didn't like. Remember that? Unreal. The Democrats don't believe in the independent judiciary, my friend. They pretend to. No. If that court isn't in their pocket, then they're going to attack. God help us. These people are so wicked. They are literally tearing to pieces our republic and then trying to reconstruct it from its bits and pieces into a dictatorship, a one-party, top-down dictatorship of the Democrat Party. How dare this senator threaten the court with recriminations in an effort to intimidate specific jurists on that court to vote the way he thinks they should vote? How dare he expose these jurists and their families to what, assault, attack? You've seen how these people are behaving out there now, to public recrimination. How dare he, a member of the legislative branch of our government, call on the pro-abortion mob gathered before the court to join him in an effort to intimidate that court? The outrage that he would name Gorsuch and Kavanaugh reminds me of that crazy woman here in California, Maxine Waters, calling on all the Democrats to get in our faces and tell us we're not welcome in California anymore. Last year, was it not? It wasn't long ago. Trump tweeted that Ginsburg and Sotomayor should recuse themselves from a case involving him because they have openly demonstrated their bias against him politically and ideologically, and even personally. Schumer, he stepped up with this and just got all outraged about it. Remember that? How dare the president call for justices to recuse themselves? That's none of his business, and so on. Well, that's a far cry from what you just did, fella. Now, this same Schumer, Senator Schumer, openly threatened two U.S. Supreme Court justices by name that they had better watch out how they rule on a case because they're going to release the whirlwind and, man, they're going to pay. This is unbelievable. The Democratic Party has gone out of its ever-loving mind. You've got a representative of the legislative branch threatening members of the judiciary branch. These are separate and co-equal branches of our government. Alexander Hamilton said, quote, "If, then, the courts of justice are to be considered as the bulwarks of a limited constitution against legislative encroachments, this consideration will afford a strong argument for the permanent tenure of judicial offices," end quote. Now, he talked a little differently than we do today, but he's saying that in order to protect the integrity and the freedom of a court from political hacks and political corruption, like this attempt on Schumer's part to intimidate jurists, then the jurists must be given permanent tenure. So guys like Schumer can't intimidate them. Schumer should be, at a minimum, censored for this egregious offense, and really, he ought to resign. He has no business continuing in the high office he's been loaned. He does not own it. He thinks so, but he does not own it. And then you hear his apology. Did you hear his apology? In his apology, he doubles down on his attack against Gorsuch and Kavanaugh. And after he admits his rhetoric was inappropriate, that he should not have said what he said, he excuses it by explaining, well, you got to take it in context. You have to consider what it is I'm trying to defend. Yeah. He says that what Senator McConnell failed to mention in his rebuke against that senator, Mr. Schumer, was the reason he said what he said. The context. Schumer explained. I was just trying to protect abortion rights. He called it the constitutional right to choose. No one has any inalienable right to murder a baby in or out of a mother's womb. No one has a constitutional right to murder a human being simply because that human being is an inconvenience. The court that passed this wicked law admitted that if the baby in the womb is legally recognized as a person, then abortion would be murder. But let's put that aside for the moment. After all, I'm running out of my time for this show. Who are the people Schumer is standing with? Who is he surrounding himself with? Who is he identified with? Who are these abortion advocates who would become furious about a law that simply says the doctor performing an abortion must have admitting privileges at a nearby hospital for the protection of his patient? You might have come across Millie Weaver, a conservative blogger that gets into the streets and exposes liberal lunacy. She was at this rally where Schumer exposed his own derriere to all present, and she took some pictures, some video for us. And at the rally, there were some very lovely ladies, with toilet mouths spewing what has accumulated in their sewer hearts, proud of murdering their babies, celebrating their abortions. Remember back when it was, legal, safe, and rare. Now, here's one of these wearing a set of earrings that depict a crocodile eating a baby. I'm not kidding you. It's a crocodile with a baby, an infant, in its mouth. She has a pair of earrings of a crocodile eating an infant. Are you kidding me? Really? Be careful what you pray for, folks. It was only some few years ago that I called our church to begin praying God would reveal the truth about abortion, that Americans would at least see what it really is and get out from behind the cloud created by liberal rhetoric, fetus, and it's not really a person, all this junk, and expose to America what this evil business really is all about. That God would turn on the lights, as it were, and let America see the truth about abortion and those who advocate for it. Now, that's back before Veritas revealed their scathing expose on the industry. Look at it, America. See God is showing you what this really is. I mean, it's Pharaoh demanding every male child of Hebrew women be cast into the Nile to be food for their crocodiles. That's where this thing's headed. To China policies requiring or compelling abortion by law. Where else would she have gotten this idea of a crocodile eating a baby if she's not hailing back to those days when Pharaoh had a decree requiring Hebrew mothers to throw their babies into the river to be eaten by crocodiles? Starnes got fired from his TV show on Fox because he said Democrats worship at the altar of Moloch. The God, by the way, that was worshipped by placing infants in his burning arms as a sacrifice. I don't think our friend ever really recovered from that. Sad. I trust he will be vindicated. But back to this. Here you have an abortion activist wearing crocodile eating a baby earrings, proud of her abortions and cursing with a smirk about how great it is to kill a baby in her womb. These people are loons, and I mean lunatics. They're crazy. They're insane with their hatred and their wickedness and their evil bloodlust for babies' blood. It's terrible what's gone on. And speaking of liberal lunacy, did you see the screecher, actress Busy Phillips? She was also at this rally, and she literally screeched. I couldn't believe this. She's screaming, "I won't stop talking about my ovulations that line up with the moon." I'm telling you, these people are crazy. It was hard to control the impulse to LOL. But maybe I've gone a little OT. Schumer was in his element, a pack of crazy people celebrating abortion, angry about a law that at least ensures the doctor performing one of these monstrous surgeries has admitting privileges at a nearby hospital. People who not only demand the right to kill a baby in the womb, but to kill the baby right up to term. And not only to kill the baby up to term, but even to kill that baby after it's born. And here a woman wearing jewelry that reminds us of the real purpose of murdering babies. It's population control, right? Specifically controlling certain populations. Now, that more black babies have been murdered than were living in America in 1973 when this law was passed. Sanger, founder of Planned Parenthood, specifically targeted black babies for extermination. It's a wicked, wicked business, and it must stop. I have lit the lamps of the Church of Belfry Arch. You call and let me know you see the lights are on. You can call me 805-314-2114 or go to our website, BrainMassage.net. Find the contact button, send me an email. God bless you, my dear friends. God bless America. And I'll see you in church.
Satan wants you to believe the world belongs to him and that you, Christian, have no say and no place in it. But the secret is out. Jesus is king, and all mankind are his subjects. Learn how to claim the earth for Jesus Christ. Get God's War, why Christians should rule the world.
God'sWar2020.com